Welcome back. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. India and the United States have taken a major step towards deepening economic ties, agreeing on a framework for an interim trade agreement that could transform India's export landscape and strengthen its global supply chain position. The biggest immediate gain for India, well, tariffs imposed by the US on Indian exports will drop sharply from 50% to just 18%. This single move makes Indian products far more competitive in the US consumer market, benefiting sectors like textiles, footwear, chemicals, as well as handicrafts that employ millions across the country. The agreement goes even further. Key export sectors such as generic pharmaceuticals, gems and diamonds, and aircraft components will eventually get tariff-free access to the US market, giving India a powerful boost in high-value global trade. In return, India will reduce tariffs on select US industrial and agricultural goods, making advanced machinery, medical equipment, and technology cheaper to import, strengthening India's manufacturing ambitions. The deal also deepens cooperation in critical technologies like semiconductors, artificial intelligence, hardware and cloud infrastructure, positioning India as a key partner in future global supply chains. Importantly, India has protected sensitive sectors like dairy and staple crops, ensuring farmers remain shielded from foreign competition. This interim pact is not the final destination, but a crucial stepping stone towards a full bilateral trade agreement, one that could open a $30 trillion market, create jobs, and reshape India's role in the global economy. Ajay Dua, former Commerce Secretary, is joining us live. We also have Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, former diplomat, live with us. Raymond Vikri, International Affairs expert, joins us on the broadcast. Also with us is Ravi Karkara, founder at Invest NYC Forum. Let me begin with you first, Ajay Dua. What are going to be the immediate implications of this trade agreement being finalized? And how big a relief is this for India that the deal is finally done?
Uday, thank you for having me in your discussion. I'm happy that this morning the joint declaration of statement of the way forward for getting into a trade pact was announced. It brings in a fair amount of clarity from what was the situation about a week ago when an announcement was made and different interpretations were being given by different people because it wasn't, I would say it wasn't a joint statement. Having said that, I would like to make it clear that it is even now its purpose of the boundaries, parameters for the negotiations, further negotiations have been defined. No agreement has been arrived at, but since it's come from the White House and has the consent of the Indian government at its highest level, so I'm optimistic that we would have an agreement maybe in a month's time, maybe in 2 months' time, an interim agreement which will thereafter be followed by a bilateral trade agreement. In the interim agreement itself, as you know, it's been agreed that the tariffs would be brought down from the existing 25 plus 25 to 18%, and the benefits of action under 232 would continue, which means that Indian pharmaceuticals, gems and jewelry from India, and a few other things would continue to remain in the category of zero duties. Going forward, a direction has been given that India would have to allow certain amount of agriculture products from the US, and I think we can live with those because they, at the same time, it's been agreed in the joint statement that the main grains of India, the main staples, and those have been listed, that none of those would be, India need not open up its doors for those grains, etc. But the agriculture, yes, opening up, but on selected manner to which, for, I know which would cause, I would, let's say, the least amount of damage to the Indian farmers. And on the whole, I would say now that we know what is likely to happen, So this greater certainty, removal of unpredictability, that itself is a very good measure for the further trade building and other relations between the two countries.
Yes, let me also rope you in here, Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, on how big a win this is also for our negotiating team, given the fact that this deal has concluded, but also the red lines that we had set, particularly in the space of agriculture, those have finally been agreed to by the US and respected as well.
Well, thank you for inviting me to this discussion. It's a very important development which has taken place for India, for US, and for the world. Well, in any negotiation, in any agreement, there is always some wins and some losses. But as long as the overall picture is positive, overall wins are significantly more than the losses, for both the sides, that is a good situation to be in. Now, this is currently an evolving situation. We have agreed to certain things which we will have to understand and see how to cope with the impact which it will have on the Indian economy. But overall, what happens in an agreement like this is that the atmosphere changes from a position where it was quite negative, quite stressed, quite strained, and a lot of tensions, to suddenly where we can start discussing the other aspects also in a positive framework. Where we have immediately gained, I would say, is that the market access and certainty of market access in terms of the preferential access to the US markets for Indian companies in the IT services, in the pharma generic sector, and engineering and auto ancillaries. And it has reduced all the uncertainty for exporters. They were under a lot of pressure for a long time. And now they are going to be sort of more clear in terms of going ahead and managing their entire export books and export orders. So all that is going to change significantly. It's also going to strengthen India's geopolitical position in terms of the strategic aspects, because earlier there was talk about G2, China plus one, US plus China strategy. Now India will again have a better positioning in terms of support to US in the Indo-Pacific and support from US in the Indo-Pacific, which was essential. The problems that we face in terms of the challenges are similar to what the US faces in terms of jihadi Islam, political Islam, in terms of China, in terms of the woke element. So the two countries working together, of course, with all their synergies. And sitting in the US, I've seen that in a lot of areas, a lot of significant progress is made in the US initially, but the people who are contributing to that progress are Indian diaspora in the US, and then it benefits India also very significantly, and then it benefits the whole world. So our IIT engineers here, our doctors here, they are at the forefronts of advancement of knowledge in the US, because there is the availability of resources is very significant in the US compared to India. In India, when we discuss about tenders, etc., there are tremendous amount of limitations and budget constraints. Whereas in the US, you go ahead with a very big open mind. So it's easier to seek out solutions and to get solutions which are very, very useful for US, for India, and for the world later. So then there's supply chain, global supply chain alignment will take place in a more strategic manner. And US also sees India as a strategic counterweight in the Indo-Pacific. So for India also, it's like a good policy to move ahead with the US. The current administration is in power till November.
Yes.
The situation could change, and
yes.
then there would be further changes in this also.
Okay, let me join Raymond Vickery also, because Raymond Vickery, of course, it certainly is a big moment. Now, as far as, of course, the fine print is concerned, the joint statement has revealed a lot more than we initially knew from what Donald Trump said on his first social media post, and then It was followed up by PM Modi as well. From now, the further details emerging, what do you make about who stands to gain what in this agreement?
Well, thanks very much for having me and allowing me to comment on this. It seems to me that the major message here is that the downward spiral in the U.S.-India relationship has been stopped, and hopefully we're going to be able to go on an upward course that we've been on for the past 30 years in closer cooperation between these two largest and greatest democracies in the world. The cooperation has to include economic engagement, economic engagement is not separate from security concerns and the wide range of mutual interest that India and the U.S. have. That having been said, it's important to recognize that this is not even an interim agreement, much less a bilateral trade agreement. It is only a framework for an interim agreement, then supposedly which will mature into a bilateral agreement. So we have a long way to go before we can see exactly what the parameters and the effects are of this so-called framework. That having been said, it is important to recognize that the major element here is a reduction from a prohibitory 50% to 18%. But the perspective on that has to be that 18% is an increase in overall tariffs from an average of 2.5%, which obtained before President Trump started upon this ill-advised tariff reciprocity, so-called approach to international affairs. It is a self-created problem which has been ameliorated but not resolved. 18% is about 7 times the 2.5% which was on these industries prior to the dislocations occasioned by the so-called Liberation Day reciprocal tariffs of April the 2nd of last year. It does appear that not only is there a reduction in terms of 18%, but that other areas will actually be reduced more than that. Called out are pharmaceuticals, gyms, and airplane parts, and then further negotiation for reduction in regard to automobile parts and other areas. So there is more to come here, and the good news is that there is some engagement in this. One thing which is in the joint statement, which was not in President Trump's social media post, which I think is of advantage to India, is the statement that India and the U.S. will work together on supply chains and the security of supply chains. And this goes directly to the rare earths question, in which China has used that as leverage over the rest of the world in the most important advanced technological areas of artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and so forth. There is a Pax Silica approach which has been posited by the White House and by the Department of State. And it appears from this, the implication is that India will now be a full partner in that process. So I think that that's very much to the advantage of India. One thing which is not addressed in the joint statement at all, but has been addressed in a second executive order, is the question of buying Russian oil, which of course is very sensitive, both from Indian domestic political aspect as well as internationally. And on that score, the jury is very much still out on what it actually means, because the silence from India on the question of Russian oil is deafening, in that there is no confirmation anywhere of President Trump's statement that Prime Minister Modi agreed to stop buying Russian oil. Nevertheless, you can see some positive aspect in that at least India and the United States are talking in a positive way about cooperation of measures necessary to end the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But what that means overall is to be decided. So this is a good step. It is not nearly what was announced by President Trump, and is really the prologue to continued engagement to arrive at a bilateral trade agreement.
Point taken. Mr. Vikri, I'm going to come back to you. Let me quickly just also rope in Ravi Karkara before I also move on to a next angle emerging in this segment, because Ravi Karkara, now this agreement also, indicates that the fissures which had developed between India and the US have been ironed out. Now that those are left behind, is it also a time to move forward for greater cooperation and collaboration once again in multiple sectors and domains, which forge a partnership between close countries?
Good to be back here. Very important points were made by the panelists earlier. I think the point is very clear that, the agreement has to, we just know the terms of reference, right? We still need to iron out and know details.
Yes.
So especially with this administration, you don't know what we'll finally get. So with that caveat, I would just say that, yes, it's definitely an important point, but just to say that India's been negotiating hard. And of course, the criticism can come back and say, yes, on the point that, Mr. Vikri made, that, in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, we are anywhere between 2.3 to 3.8%. And, so going up to 50 to 75, bringing it down to 18% looks great. But is India the preferred nation? Is that true or not? So I think there are lots of, there's always a lot of slip between, the cup and the lip. But on the positive note, yes, it's important. I think India really wants to calm down the situation. It wants to get into business. India has the opportunity to look at some excellent FTAs. And I think the important point for India really is really put the head down and look at really beefing up the manufacturing, bring the FDIs in, and really move forward with that. There will always be issues, and really, I mean, if it was another administration, I would have said, this is brilliant, let's celebrate. Yes, in the morning, euphoria was there, but that's how it's being played, right? Everything is being weaponized, right? The entire, from the diplomacy to political profiling to the tariff warfare. But of course, the business community is clear, and I think there is definitely a lot to do with the upcoming AI summit in Delhi, where the CEOs are saying, look, we cannot go to India with this all the drama happening behind our back. So I think we will see some important ironing out of things. I really hope that we will come down from 18% to 15%. Is that great? As Mr. Vikri said, it's not what, I was there for the White House summit, with President, Biden in the White House. Then we were there for the CEO summit. We celebrated all that. But now I would say that we've gone back, but I would say we've gone forward, back and back many ways, and we've gone back to go forward. We've not reached the forward that way we were in January 2025.
Yes, I'm just going to come back to you because I want to quickly examine our new segment. It's not just India who wins in this, India who gains in this win-win deal. It's, of course, clearly a win-win for both sides. Now, India, of course, stands to gain greater access to the American market. This interim trade agreement is equally strategic for the United States. It strengthens America's economic and geopolitical position in Asia. The deal opens India's vast and fast-growing market to American exports. U.S. companies will now face lower tariffs on high-value industrial goods like advanced machinery, aircraft components, and medical equipment, giving American manufacturers access to one of the world's largest and fastest expanding consumer bases. The agreement also creates massive opportunities for U.S. technology firms, with India reducing barriers in sectors like semiconductors, artificial intelligence, hardware, and digital infrastructure. American tech giants now can gain deeper and greater entry into a market that is rapidly becoming a global manufacturing and innovation hub. Beyond economics, the biggest gain for Washington is strategic. By strengthening trade ties with India, the US is reinforcing a trusted economic partner at a time when it is actively reducing dependence on China. In simple terms, this deal is not just about trade, it's about supply chains, influence, and also securing America's long-term economic foothold in the world's fastest growing major economy. What all does the US hope to gain from this strategic partnership, Raymond Vickery? And what are the win-wins for the US in this deal, according to you?
Yes, the United States, of course, has much to gain from closer engagement with the fastest growing major economy in the world. It has much to gain by putting back on track security measures like the Quad, which has really been pushed aside. It was supposed to have a summit in India in 2025, and presumably that kind of strategic approach can now resume. The jury, of course, is still out as to what kinds of reduction in tariffs will apply to the United States and what goods. It says in the joint statement that India will eliminate or reduce. Well, that's a big difference between eliminating and reducing. You can have a reduction which is insignificant, or you can have one which is very significant. Nevertheless, there is the statement of goodwill on that regard, and being able to resume something which is like a normal relationship in terms of trade and investment, economic engagement across the board is to the benefit of the United States. The problem, of course, is that the whole reciprocal tariff, as announced by President Trump, was based upon non-cooperation. It was based upon having a fortress America in regard to the economy, that somehow other foreign suppliers would be excluded from the American market, and therefore they would flock into the United States. Well, this is a pipe dream. It's not reality. And hopefully this step, this framework leading to an interim agreement and then to a bilateral trade agreement will put us back on track and save us from the kind of chaos which was created in the first place by the Trump administration. President Trump is an expert at creating a problem and then ameliorating that problem and claiming victory. That is what is happening here. So we hope that India will stay the course. It has done very well through Minister Goyal and others in terms of forcing some sort of logic on this, and hopefully that's going to continue.
All right. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this discussion. We're turning our focus to breaking news coming in this hour. Nearly 40 students have fallen ill following a suspected case of food poisoning at the integrated girls' hostel in Belapalli town of Mancheria